They found his teeth before they found his name. The morning fog along the docks clung to the battered warehouses, turning blood to rust. Eddie Malone was just 29, Irish-American, built like a dock worker but born to hustle, and tonight he'd become a warning. A stray dog pawed at something pale beneath a shipping container. By the time Officer Rodriguez knelt to look, the others were already calling for backup. Rodriguez said, "This is cartel business." His partner just nodded, eyes locked on the shattered jaw. The first rays of sun flickered across salt-stained pavement, glinting off the gold tooth Eddie had flashed in every backroom. The air stank of salt, diesel, and old secrets. Not far away, a black sedan idled, engine humming low, fog curling around its wheels. Inside, two men watched the police from behind tinted glass, one drumming thick fingers on the dashboard, the other murmuring, "No mistakes tonight." Somewhere across the city, Eddie's sister Jenny Malone sat bolt upright in bed, sweat clinging to her skin, the phone already ringing. The war that would consume the coast began with that scream, a flash of metal, and a silence that spread like oil on water. Jenny Malone didn't remember falling asleep, only the hollow ache that clung to her chest since Eddie vanished 3 days ago. The phone kept ringing, each shrill blast another slice of dread. She fumbled, answered, and heard the voice of Officer Rodriguez, clipped and careful. Rodriguez said, "Jenny, you need to come down to the pier." Jenny's mind spun. Her legs trembled as she stared out the window, city shadows dragging long and cold across faded bedsheets. The last words Eddie had spoken replayed in her head. "If you don't hear from me, promise me you'll run." But Jenny couldn't run. Not from this, not from blood. Her hands shook as she pulled on jeans, heart pounding, memories swirling, birthday parties in alleys, late-night pizza, Eddie's laugh echoing off brick. The city outside was waking up, unaware a war had just begun. Jenny's knuckles whitened as she gripped the doorknob. The day felt like glass about to shatter. Somewhere, a siren wailed. Jenny whispered, "Please, let him be alive." But in her bones, she already knew. The sun crawled higher as the crime scene grew. Yellow tape snapped in the ocean wind, officers whispering in tight knots. Rodriguez moved through the chaos, notepad in hand, his jaw set like iron. The medical examiner, Dr. Patel, knelt beside Eddie's body, voice soft and grim. Dr. Patel said, "This wasn't random. This was a message." Rodriguez nodded, feeling the unspoken threat settle in his gut. He glanced at the crushed jaw, at the gold tooth. In the distance, a seagull screamed, circling above the blood-stained dock. Reporters began to arrive, cameras glinting, faces hungry for tragedy. Rodriguez's partner Martinez leaned in, voice low. Martinez said, "You think this is the West Coast Cartel?" Rodriguez replied, "Who else leaves a man like this?" The city behind them buzzed, traffic roaring, unaware its streets would soon run red. Rodriguez straightened, eyes hard. The war had a face now, and he was staring right at it. Jenny's cab rolled to a stop at the docks. She pressed trembling hands to the window, eyes wide as she took in the chaos, flashing lights, grim faces, yellow tape fluttering like the wings of some dying bird. As she stepped out, the salt air hit her, cold and unforgiving. Officer Rodriguez spotted her, cutting through the crowd, voice gentle but urgent. Rodriguez said, "Jenny, I'm sorry, we need to talk." Jenny's knees buckled, but she forced herself upright, fists clenched. Her heart screamed denial, but her mind catalogued every detail. Dye's boots, a smear of blood, the blank faces of the men in the sedan watching from a distance. The world blurred at the edges. Jenny swallowed, said, "Just tell me it's not him." Rodriguez looked away. Somewhere nearby, dockworkers stared, silent, afraid to meet her eyes. Jenny took one step forward. She was not going to break, not yet. Jenny stood over her brother's body, knees trembling, hands curled tight at her sides. Rodriguez's words became background noise, drowned out by the rush of blood in her ears. Her world had been reduced to this patch of cold concrete, and the lifeless shell of the man she loved most. She remembered Eddie as a boy, chasing seagulls and laughing with a mouth full of trouble. Now his smile was just a memory, his body a warning to anyone who dared cross the West Coast Cartel. Jenny knelt, whispering, "I'll make them pay, Eddie." Rodriguez placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, voice quiet. Rodriguez said, "You need to be careful. This isn't over." Jenny stood, chin set, eyes blazing with tears. The first act of vengeance was written in salt and blood, and she would not run. Not now, not ever. Somewhere, far off, thunder rolled. The war had begun. Jenny Malone walked through her childhood apartment, each room echoing with memories that hurt to touch. She paused at the kitchen, staring at a faded photo taped to the fridge, "Die at 12." His arms slung around her shoulders, both of them grinning with a kind of reckless innocence. Now her world was reduced to aftershocks and silence. She rummaged through drawers, searching for some clue Eddie had left behind, desperate for meaning. The news on TV played in the background, voices flat with tragedy. Jenny pressed a hand to her stomach, nausea twisting. "How did it get so bad, Eddie?" she whispered. The phone rang again, but she let it go. Sunlight pooled on the cracked linoleum, dust swirling in the golden beam, memories colliding. Their mother singing over burnt toast, Eddie's laughter ricocheting through the halls, the day their father left. Jenny clenched her jaw, refusing to let tears fall. She would not be broken, not yet. If Eddie had left anything behind, she would find it, no matter what it cost. A knock at the door startled Jenny, and her heart slammed against her ribs. She hesitated, listening. Another knock, louder this time. She approached slowly, cautious, peering through the peephole. Officer Rodriguez stood in the hallway, face grim, hat in his hands. Jenny opened the door, voice shaking as she said, "Did you find anything?" Rodriguez stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He handed her an envelope, its surface smudged with fingerprints. Rodriguez said, "Eddie wanted you to have this. He gave it to me a week ago, just in case." Jenny's hands shook as she opened it. Inside she found a small key and a note written in Eddie's scrawling hand. "If anything happens, trust no one. Storage locker 13. Jenny's breath caught. Rodriguez watched her, concern in his eyes. Jenny said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Rodriguez replied, "Because I thought he'd walk away this time." Jenny pressed the key to her heart, silent vow burning in her chest. Jenny rode the bus across the city, fingers curled tight around the key, replaying Eddie's last words. The bus rumbled through rain-slicked streets, neon signs smearing colors across wet glass. At the back, an old woman dozed, while a young man in a hoodie watched Jenny with curious eyes. Jenny ignored everyone, lost in her thoughts. Each passing block peeled away another layer of her old life, exposing nerves raw and aching. She remembered Eddie teaching her how to ride a bike, his hand steady on her shoulder. Now she had to be steady for both of them. As the bus shuddered to a halt, Jenny stood, rain beating against the windows. She stepped into the downpour, city lights reflected in puddles at her feet. The air tasted of exhaust and fear. Clutching the key, Jenny whispered, "I'm not afraid." But she was. The city had never felt so big, or so cold. The storage facility crouched on the edge of the city, a fortress of corrugated steel and faded graffiti. Jenny's sneakers splashed through puddles as she approached locker 13, each step echoing in the silent corridor. Her breath fogged the air, heart thumping in her throat. She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder, the feeling of being watched tightening her nerves. The key slid easily into the lock. The door groaned open, revealing a battered duffel bag and a notebook bound with rubber bands. Jenny's hands shook as she reached inside. The bag held stacks of cash, a cheap burner phone, and a loaded pistol. The notebook was filled with names and numbers, some crossed out, some circled in red. Jenny realized Eddie had been planning something big, and now it was hers. She heard footsteps in the corridor, snapping the notebook shut. Jenny whispered, "Eddie, what did you get us into?" Outside, thunder cracked, the city holding its breath. Jenny stuffed the notebook and burner phone into her backpack, every muscle taut with adrenaline. As she stepped outside, rain hammered the pavement, cold and relentless. She kept her head down, watching for shadows that moved wrong, breaths shallow. A car engine started somewhere nearby, headlights flickering through the gloom. Jenny broke into a run, duffel bag bouncing against her hip, heart pounding. She darted through alleyways, water splashing, shoes slipping on slick concrete. Every sound became a threat, a door slamming, distant sirens, footsteps echoing behind her. Jenny ducked beneath a fire escape, pressing herself into the shadows, clutching the pistol now heavy in her hand. She remembered Eddie's words, "Trust no one." Thunder rolled overhead, as Jenny realized she was truly alone. For the first time, the city seemed to turn its back on her, leaving her with only rage, grief, and the taste of fear sharp in her mouth. Jenny huddled beneath the rusted fire escape, rain trickling down her face, adrenaline refusing to let her rest. Her breath fogged in the cold, every sense sharpened by fear. She dialed the burner phone with trembling fingers, hoping for a lifeline. The call went straight to voicemail. Di's voice, bright and reckless, a gut punch. She almost dropped the phone. Across the street, headlights swept past, illuminating graffiti and dumpsters, shadows morphing into threats. Jenny scanned the notebook again, noting a circled name. Marcus Doyle. She whispered, "Who the hell are you, Marcus?" At that moment, a figure moved through the alley, slow and purposeful. Jenny pressed back against the bricks, heart pounding. The figure paused, looked her way, and continued on. Jenny's relief was shaky. She knew the cartel would be hunting her by now, her brother's secrets painting a target on her back. She wiped her eyes, squared her shoulders, and slipped into the storm, determined to find answers or die trying. The address for Marcus Doyle led Jenny deep into the warehouse district, where the city's pulse thudded with danger. She kept to the shadows, clutching the pistol in her pocket, nerves frayed to the breaking point. She reached a battered metal door, paint peeling, marked with a faded 13. She knocked 3 times, knuckles raw. A slit in the door slid open, and wary blue eyes peered out. Marcus Doyle was older than she'd pictured. White male, late 40s, scars across his knuckles, work shirt stained by old oil. Marcus growled, "Who sent you?" Jenny replied, "Eddie Malone." The name hung in the air, electric. Marcus's face changed, suspicion warring with old pain. He opened the door just enough. Marcus said, "If you're lying, you're dead." Jenny met his eyes, fire in hers. "He's gone. They killed him." For a moment, Marcus hesitated, then beckoned her inside, bolting the door behind them. The warehouse swallowed them whole. Inside, the warehouse was a tomb of rusted machinery and broken dreams. Jenny and Marcus moved through the gloom, shadows crawling across the cracked floor. Marcus kept glancing over his shoulder, hand resting near a crowbar. He asked, "Why'd Eddie trust you with that notebook?" Jenny held his gaze. "Because I'm his sister, because I don't scare easy." Marcus cracked a bitter smile. Eddie was smart, but he played with fire. The cartel burns everyone. He opened a battered locker, pulling out old photos. Di, Marcus, and a handful of men Jenny recognized from the notebook. Marcus said, "We tried to get out years ago. Only Eddie had the guts to plan it." Jenny's chest tightened with pride and dread. The past wasn't just haunting them. It was hunting them. Marcus's voice softened. "You want revenge. You need to know who really killed your brother." Jenny nodded, jaw set. She would have answers, even if they broke her. Marcus poured 2 shots of whiskey, hands shaking, old anger flickering in his eyes. He slid a glass to Jenny, who ignored it, gaze fixed on the map Marcus spread across a workbench. Red X's marked cartel, safe houses, routes, and drop points. Marcus pointed at a name, Victor Rios. "He runs the muscle now. Eddie tried to take him down, but Victor's untouchable, unless you hit him where it hurts." Jenny asked, "Where's that?" Marcus's lips curled into a grim smile. "Family, loyalty. He only cares about blood." Jenny studied the map, noting every detail, determination burning through her fear. Thunder rattled the windows, the storm outside mirroring the violence brewing within. Marcus added, "Once you start this, there's no going back." Jenny met his gaze, unflinching. "I never planned on coming back." The war's rules were written in ink and gunpowder. She would play by neither. Jenny tucked the notebook into her bag, adrenaline making her hands clumsy. Marcus said, "You'll need help. I know a guy, Andre Lewis. Trust him, but not too much." Jenny nodded, mind already racing ahead. She left the warehouse, rain easing, but the city still slick and raw. She moved through empty streets, every window a possible threat, every shadow a hiding place for regret. At a corner, she dialed the burner phone again, voice barely above a whisper. "Andre, it's Jenny Malone. Marcus sent me." A pause, then a gruff reply, "Meet me at the Mirage. Don't be late." Jenny hung up, shoulders squared against the chill. She walked into the night, rage and hope fueling each step. The city held its breath. The first blow in her private war had been struck, and there would be no peace until blood answered blood. Jenny Malone entered the Mirage, a dive bar washed in red neon, and the stench of old secrets. The night outside pressed against filthy windows, rain streaking the glass. Inside, rough men nursed cheap whiskey, every pair of eyes measuring strangers, trust as rare as luck. At the end of the bar sat Andre Lewis, black male, early 30s, ex-boxer's build, scar above his left eyebrow, hands folded, gaze cold as steel. Jenny crossed the sticky floor, boots echoing, nerves set on edge. Andre sized her up, then nodded, voice low and deliberate. Andre said, "Marcus vouches for you. That buys you 5 minutes, Joel." Jenny sat, her words clipped. "I need to get to Victor Rios. You know his routines." Andre's eyes narrowed. "Knowing's one thing, doing is another." Jenny met his stare, matching his fire. "I have what he wants." Andre's lips curled in a wry smile. "You got a death wish, Malone." Jenny whispered, "I want justice." The room buzzed with threat and desperation. Andre slid a napkin across the bar, a phone number scribbled in black marker, his eyes never leaving Jenny's. Andre said, "Rios's man Hector runs numbers for the cartel. He's at the docks Tuesday nights. That's your way in, but it'll cost you." Jenny asked, "How much?" Andre replied, "Favor for favor. When this blows back on me, I want out. Full clean slate." Jenny considered, then nodded. "Done." The bartender, a grizzled old man with faded tattoos, watched their exchange with silent worry. Jenny downed her whiskey in one gulp, the burn stealing her resolve. Andre muttered, "Don't get killed." Jenny stood, tucking the napkin into her jacket, checking her bag for the pistol. The storm outside had turned violent, thunder rattling the bottles behind the bar. Jenny stepped into the night, knowing every move from now on would pull her deeper into a game she might never escape. Jenny arrived at the docks before midnight, rain reduced to a drizzle, fog rolling in from the bay. She found Hector Gutierrez, Latino male, late 30s, athletic, hunched in a shipping container, sorting stacks of cash with practiced fingers. Jenny approached quietly, one hand on her pistol, every nerve stretched thin. Hector looked up, surprise flashing before his expression hardened. Hector said, "You lost, girl?" Jenny replied, "Tell Rios I have his ledger." Hector's face shifted from contempt to sharp calculation. "That's a dangerous game. What's stopping me from killing you now?" Jenny's lips curled. "If I disappear, the ledger goes public. Eddie made sure of that." Hector studied her, realizing she wasn't bluffing. The tension thickened, diesel and salt in the air, fog muffling the city's distant roar. Jenny held her ground, willing herself not to flinch. Hector slowly nodded. "Meet me here tomorrow. Rios will want to see you himself." Jenny's gamble had worked, for now. Jenny returned to Marcus's warehouse, nerves frayed, rainwater dripping from her jacket. Marcus waited, eyes hooded with worry, pistol on the table. Jenny relayed every detail, The deal with Andre, the meeting with Hector, the threat she'd made. Marcus paced the room, fists clenched. Rios will try to break you, Jenny. He won't play fair. Jenny replied, neither will I. She dropped the duffel bag on the floor, spilling out Eddie's notebook and pistol. Marcus shook his head. If you pull this off, you'll bring the whole cartel down, or they'll bury you in the river. Jenny's resolve hardened. I'm done running. Marcus loaded the pistol and handed it to her, his voice low. Whatever happens, finish it. Thunder echoed, rattling loose panes in the warehouse roof. Jenny tucked the weapon into her belt, fire in her eyes. The city outside was ready to explode, and Jenny Malone stood at the heart of the storm. Jenny spent the night in restless silence, camped on a battered mattress in the warehouse far corner, city lights blinking through broken windows. She clutched Eddie's notebook, tracing each name, memorizing every detail. Thunder faded, replaced by the low hum of the waking city. At dawn, Marcus brewed cheap coffee, handing her a steaming cup. He said, "Today you make them bleed, or you don't come back." Jenny sipped in silence, jaw clenched, eyes hard. The world outside was unforgiving. Steel, rain, and the stench of betrayal. She checked the pistol, every motion steady, breathing slow and deliberate. "For Eddie," she whispered, a promise tattooed on her soul. Marcus watched, pride and fear warring in his gaze. Jenny stood, squared her shoulders and walked toward the door, dawn's pale light crowning her in cold fire. The final act had begun, and there would be no turning back. Jenny Malone walked the empty docks at dawn, shoes crunching broken glass, each step echoing her resolve. The city was hushed, mist curling off the bay as if holding its breath for what came next. She reached the meeting spot, a graffitied container, flanked by two armed men with cold eyes. Hector Gutierrez waited, arms crossed, gaze unwavering. Hector said, "Rios is inside, last chance to walk away." Jenny's voice was flint. "I'm not here for chances." One guard frisked her, rough hands finding the pistol, but Hector shook his head. "Let her keep it." Jenny caught the warning in his eyes, a flicker of respect or pity. She entered the container, heart pounding, senses sharpened by fear and fury. The air was heavy with sweat, diesel, and betrayal. This was the moment everything would break. Eddie's voice haunted her. "You only get one shot." Jenny tightened her grip on the notebook, ready for war. No more running. Inside, Victor Rios waited, a tall, imposing Latino male in his late 40s, expensively dressed, gold watch glinting. His eyes were shark black, unreadable. Rios sat at a folding table, flanked by two bodyguards. Jenny entered, unblinking. Rios said, "You must be Malone, brave or stupid." Jenny replied, "I have your ledger." She tossed the notebook onto the table, watching his reaction. Rios smiled, razor thin. "You think this ends with me? The cartel is a hydra." Jenny stood her ground, fire in her eyes. "Cut off the head, the body dies." Rios's expression turned, amusement giving way to menace. He said, "You want revenge? You'll need more than a book." Jenny kept her hand close to the pistol, every muscle coiled. Tension hung in the air, thick as oil. The city outside was waking, but in this steel tomb, the rules had changed. Jenny had come for blood, and Rios knew it. Victor Rios opened the notebook, eyes scanning names and numbers. His jaw clenched as he found pages marked in Eddie's handwriting, circled deals, crossed out enforcers, and a coded message meant for Jenny alone. Rios slammed the notebook shut, voice ice cold. "Your brother was a traitor. Now you want to take his place?" Jenny's hands shook, but she stood firm. "He was never your soldier. He died because he stood up." Rios gestured, and his men stepped closer. Jenny's fingers curled around her pistol, the room shrinking to breathless silence. Suddenly, gunfire erupted outside. Andre Lewis and Marcus Doyle stormed the docks, bullets splintering metal. The bodyguards turned, chaos spilling through the container door. Jenny dove behind the table, adrenaline flooding her veins. Rios grabbed her by the arm, snarling, "You brought a war to my door." Jenny met his gaze, unafraid. "You started it." Jenny broke free from Rios' grip, rolling behind a stack of crates as bullets tore through the walls. Andre Lewis burst inside, firing with ruthless precision. Marcus Doyle covered the entrance, shouting, "Jenny, move!" Jenny popped up, firing at a bodyguard. He dropped. Rios ducked behind the table, face twisted with rage. Smoke choked the air, shouts and gunshots blending into a brutal symphony. Jenny's ears rang, adrenaline carrying her through the storm. Hector switched sides, gunning down Rios' last guard with cold efficiency. Rios tried to flee, but Marcus blocked his path, shotgun leveled. Jenny advanced, pistol trained on Rios' chest. For a heartbeat, everything paused. Gun barrels, ragged breaths, blood pooling on the floor. Jenny's voice was steady, cold. "This is for Eddie." Rios raised his hands, defiant but afraid. Jenny's finger tightened on the trigger. The war's final shot was hers to claim. Victor Rios fell to his knees, blood soaking his tailored shirt. Jenny stood over him, breathing hard, pistol shaking in her grip. Marcus and Andre watched in grim silence as Rios tried to speak, but only blood bubbled from his lips. The sound of sirens grew, blue lights flickering against the steel walls. Jenny turned away from Rios, fighting tears. Marcus said, "It's done. Let's go." Andre nodded, voice rough. "We've got to disappear." Jenny took one last look at Rios, the man who destroyed her brother and so many others. She whispered, "No more ghosts." She stuffed the notebook in her bag, slipped the pistol in her waistband, and followed her allies into the gray dawn. Rain began to fall, washing the blood into the bay. The docks were silent again, but Jenny knew the violence would echo long after she was gone. The war was over. The scars would never heal. Police swept the docks, cordoning off the blood-soaked scene, blue lights refracting through the dawn drizzle. Jenny Malone stood numbly at the edge of the chaos, her hands cuffed behind her back. She barely registered the officer's monotone voice reading her rights. Jenny's eyes were fixed on the bay, where rain and blood mingled, washing away the last evidence of war. Officer Rodriguez approached, face etched with fatigue and sympathy. Rodriguez said, "You ended it, Jenny. At a cost." Jenny nodded once, feeling the exhaustion settle deep in her bones. Cameras flashed, reporters shouting questions she could barely hear. In that moment, Jenny felt emptied out, a shell left behind after the fire. Her only thought was Eddie, his laughter, his warnings, his ghost at her shoulder. The world seemed to move in slow motion as she was loaded into the squad car. The city behind her was waking to rumors and fear, but Jenny was already far away. The interrogation room was all steel and shadow, the hum of the fluorescent light gnawing at Jenny's nerves. She sat at a battered table, wrists cuffed to the metal, the city's chaos muffled by thick walls. Officer Rodriguez entered, dropping a file on the table. Photos of Eddie, Victor Rios, and a dozen crime scenes. Rodriguez said, "You did the city a favor, but you crossed too many lines." Jenny's voice was hollow. "If I hadn't, you'd have more bodies." Rodriguez's eyes softened. "I'm not your enemy, Jenny, but the world will call you killer, not savior." Jenny's jaw clenched, defiance flickering in her eyes. Rodriguez slid a paper across the table, her statement. Jenny hesitated, then signed. She felt the weight of her choices settle like lead in her chest. Outside the storm had broken, sunlight piercing through gray clouds. Justice and revenge had become the same thing. Jenny was no longer certain where the line had been. Marcus Doyle paced the waiting room outside the interrogation suite, shoulders hunched with tension. He watched Jenny through the observation window, worry etched into every line of his face. Andre Lewis, black male, early 30s, leaned against the wall, arms crossed, jaw set. Andre said, "She's tougher than anyone I ever knew." Marcus nodded, regret flickering behind his eyes. She lost everything. They both understood what was coming, Deals would be struck, but someone would have to pay. The police moved in and out, voices muffled. Andre pulled his hood low, wishing for an escape. Marcus rested a hand on his shoulder, an unspoken promise between survivors. They'd protect Jenny if they could, but their world was built on shifting sand. A clock on the wall ticked down the minutes, every second a reminder that nothing lasts forever, not even vengeance. Marcus whispered, "We owe her more than this." Andre's eyes held a storm of guilt and gratitude. Hours later, Jenny was released on bail, her wrists marked by fresh bruises, eyes ringed with exhaustion. Outside, the sky was clear, the rain scrubbed away, leaving the city raw and open. Marcus and Andre waited by the curb, shadows stretched long in the early sun. Jenny stepped into the light, backpack slung over her shoulder, movements stiff with pain. Marcus hugged her, voice rough with relief. "You made it, kid." Andre offered a fist bump, eyes softening. Still standing. Jenny tried to smile, but grief and victory twisted inside her. The three stood in silence, letting the new day settle around them. The city was waking up, unaware that a war had ended in blood and silence. Jenny looked up at the sky, wondering if Eddie would have been proud or broken by what she'd done. She knew only that she would have to live with it forever. The day crawled by in slow motion. Metiwal, Castanio, trace. Jenny walked the city, each block heavy with memories and ghosts. She passed the playground where she and Eddie once played, now empty except for a stray cat and the wind's lonely whistle. She paused at the pier, watching the water churn against the rocks, salt and loss in the air. For the first time, the city felt silent, as if mourning the cost of its own survival. Jenny sat on the edge of the dock, letting her legs dangle above the gray waves. She pressed Eddie's old photo to her heart, eyes stinging with tears she'd refused for too long. The war was over, but the ache remained, a scar she would carry always. She whispered, "Rest easy, Eddie. I did what I had to." Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang for the dead and the living. Jenny let the sound wash over her, at last allowing herself to grieve. Jenny Malone drifted through her apartment, everything familiar now feeling distant, every shadow deepened by what she had survived. The city outside her window pulsed with its usual noise, but she felt detached, like a ghost passing through her own life. She opened Eddie's notebook, tracing the faded ink with a fingertip, rereading names and numbers that had once mapped a kingdom of violence and loyalty. Jenny stared at her own reflection in the window, haunted eyes, bruised cheek, strength mingled with fatigue. She whispered, "There's no going back." Her old life was gone, burned to ash and washed to sea. Her body carried the marks of battle, but her spirit bore scars no one could see. Outside, the sound of children playing on the street mingled with distant sirens. Jenny watched the world move on, aware that she would always carry a piece of the darkness, even in the light. She was not broken, but she would never be the same. Marcus Doyle walked along a quiet street, shoulders squared beneath his old leather jacket, the weight of survival etched in his step. He passed a memorial wall, candles and photographs lined up for the fallen. Die among them, his grin defiant even in death. Marcus paused, lighting a candle, hands shaking just enough to betray his grief. He remembered Eddie's laughter, the promise to escape the life, and the way everything unraveled. A stranger nodded to Marcus, respect and caution mingling in his gaze. Marcus said, "You don't forget, you just learn to live with it." The street was washed in gold as the sun began to set, casting long shadows. Marcus knew his days in the city were numbered. The cartel was gone, but the ghosts lingered. He whispered a prayer, then turned away, leaving the flame flickering in the dusk, a promise that even the damned could find a moment's peace. Andre Lewis watched the sunrise from a rooftop, city skyline stretched before him, dawn cool and clear. He rolled a cigarette with careful hands, scars visible on his knuckles, muscles tense from years of fighting shadows. Andre remembered the look in Jenny's eyes as she walked away, a mixture of gratitude and unspoken warning. He had survived, but not unscathed. The city that nearly destroyed him now felt strangely quiet, almost hopeful. Andre said softly, "One day at a time." As the smoke curled upward, he imagined a different life. One without guns, one where loyalty didn't end in blood. He tucked Eddie's old lighter in his pocket, a silent keepsake. Sirens wailed far off, and Andre stood, stretching against the morning chill. He wasn't running anymore, but he wasn't staying either. The world below was wide open. For the first time, Andre allowed himself to hope that peace might find him yet. Jenny found herself at Eddie's grave as dusk settled, the cemetery quiet except for rustling leaves and distant city sounds. She knelt, tracing his name on the cool stone, her breath fogging in the chill. She set a single white flower on the grave, letting silence fill the space between memory and loss. "I kept my promise, Eddie," she whispered, voice steady, tears slipping down her cheeks. She thought of all they'd lost and all she'd become, hardened but not heartless, still capable of love but forever changed by violence. A cold wind swept through the trees, carrying the scent of rain and cut grass. Jenny stood wiping her face, eyes fierce. She was alive, still standing when so many had fallen. She said, "Rest easy. I'll carry you with me." The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving Jenny alone with her memories, and with hope, faint but real, burning in the darkness. Night fell over the city, neon lights flickering to life, painting the streets with restless color. Jenny stood on a rooftop, wind tugging at her hair, the whole city sprawling beneath her, a place changed by blood and fire. Her story wasn't one of victory, but survival. She watched headlights snake through the darkness, sirens in the distance, the world forever caught between hope and danger. Jenny exhaled slowly, letting the cold air steady her. "There's no retirement plan for ghosts," she murmured, voice nearly lost to the wind. The ache in her chest would never fully fade, but neither would her resolve. Jenny turned away from the cityscape, a final silent promise burning in her eyes. No matter what haunted her, she would face the dawn. Somewhere in the hush before sunrise she found her answer. Survival is not the same as peace, but it's enough to keep walking. The war was over. Jenny was still here.